Hi, everyone. Welcome to Waste 360's Nothing Wasted podcast. On every episode, we invite the most interesting people in waste, recycling, and organics to sit down with us and chat candidly about their thoughts, their work, this unique industry, and so much more. So thanks for listening and enjoy this episode. Hi, this is Liz Bothwell from Waste 360 with Dune Ives, Executive Director of the award-winning Lonely Whale, a nonprofit organization raising awareness about ocean health. Welcome, Dune, and thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Please tell us about your background and how you've made your way to Lonely Whale.
Oh gosh, this is a question I get all the time. And it's interesting because my path to get to Lonely Whale is probably not a very traditional path in the NGO space. So just a quick background, I have my PhD in psychology and have spent the better part of my professional career over the last 24, 25 years really focused on corporate engagement and kind of large-scale change efforts within corporate environments and within and across industries. So I spent a lot of time in the utility sector, spent quite a bit of time working in commercial office real estate, high tech, and then landed, thankfully, in one of the most incredible jobs I ever had, which was developing and then managing Paul Allen's first global environmental philanthropic portfolio, which is really where I cut my teeth on this hybrid between corporate engagement and philanthropy and how those two things can come together to be a force for good. Left Vulcan in 2016, and then a mutual friend of mine and Adrienne Grenier has introduced the two of us to each other, and it's been Lonely Whale ever since. So I'm going on 3.5 years at Lonely Whale.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. And I know a little bit of the background of the origin of the Lonely Whale name, but can you tell our audience why Lonely Whale and that he's really out there?
Yeah, I actually just got chills when you asked me that again. I love the origin story of the Lonely Whales. Lonely Whale was co-founded by actor and entrepreneur Adrienne Grenier and his producing partner and longtime friend Lucy Sumner. And it came out of inspiration for this real creature, this lonely whale. They were producing a documentary film about this whale that had been discovered as a result, actually, of U.S. nuclear submarine recording devices back from the Cold War era that had captured this sound that was unlike anything they'd ever heard before. No other whale sound matched it, no ships matched it, and researchers at Woods Hole identified it as a whale. It sings at a frequency of 52 hertz, which is unlike any other whale has sung before or since it's ever been recorded. And as the story goes, this whale is swimming up and down the Pacific coast, probably about 40, maybe 42, 43 years old by now. And whales are believed to sing and call for companionship. So if you can imagine, like this whale has been calling for companionship his entire life, never hearing a call back. All the while it's seeking a connection, we're able to hear the sound of this whale. We're able to hear its call, and it's a really compelling kind of character that we need to really connect to the ocean, to understand then the impact that all of the pollution we're putting in the ocean is having on this sentient, emotive creature. So that's where the foundation's inspiration came from. And what Lucy and Adrienne really wanted to do is not create another foundation, have another foundation, but really to leverage this character in this story to help all of us recognize that at the end of the day, what we need more than anything is to be connected to each other. And once we're connected to each other and we really care deeply for each other, then we'll work together to save the ocean. And so that was the genesis of Lonely Whale, which, when I heard the story, I immediately just fell in love and thought this could be it, right? This could be one of those characters that can really help all of us understand our role and our place with ocean health.
Absolutely. And it's really hard to get that visual out of your head. So it really does stick. And
it helps you relate, like you said, and the power of connection. That's amazing. What a great story. And speaking of great stories, you have a knack for some amazing campaigns. Can you tell us about your recent Question How You Hydrate campaign?
Yes, Question How You Hydrate campaign. When we launched the Strawless campaign in Seattle, on launch day and then on the wrap-up day at the end of our event in Seattle, we were asked by someone, could you do for the plastic water bottle what you just did for the straw? And that began about a 15-month quest and research effort on our part to figure out, like, what does that really mean to do for the water bottle what we did for the straw? Because they're very, very different single-use plastic items with very different histories and their own origin stories. And so what we discovered is globally, we use 500 billion single-use plastic bottles annually. We recycle about 30% of those. In 2017, 26% of all new PET polymer production that comes from oil and gas was produced with the express purpose of meeting the growth needs of the plastic water bottle industry. And when we did our national poll, we realized that people use a lot of single-use plastic water bottles. They use a lot of single-use plastic water bottles a lot of the time, but they also use reusables almost equally as much. And so we were really curious about this disconnect that we were seeing. We know what the right solutions are to hydrate the right way, where we don't use single-use plastic. We're using those options today, but what really was holding us back from that? And that was, we're a very curious team, and I'm being a psychologist. I'm always very intrigued by how do we make decisions and what influences us in making those decisions. And that led us to creating this campaign in partnership with our creative agency, Young Hero, called Hydrate Like. For those who are familiar with us, we call it Hydrate Like a Mother, because we truly believe that moms are the ones that, my daughter says there's another word that comes after that, which she's right. Hydrate Like a Mother. Really for us became the strong call to action internally that if what we want to do is we want to save the ocean from plastic, then we do need to hydrate like moms who tell you to clean your room all the time, right? And they tell you to hydrate, and they tell you to eat well and to sleep, and so it just became kind of a rallying cry for us. So Question How You Hydrate is a campaign that's just like Stop Sucking campaign. It's really intended to get people to question how many single-use plastic water bottles they use on a daily basis, and to challenge themselves, corporations to challenge themselves to hydrate like they give a damn, to hydrate like the ocean matters, and really to hydrate like future generations depend on it. And it's been really successful to date. We only launched in June, and really excited about the progress that we're seeing globally.
Oh, that's amazing. And same with Stop Sucking. I mean, you guys seem to align the perfect hashtag with great local activations and expanded support nationwide. I mean, what do you think the secret of success is to these programs?
Well, first and foremost, we don't create the hashtags ourselves. I think that's important.
Okay.
Yeah. When I joined Lonely Well, one of the things I recognized in Lucy and Adrian and in myself was this desire to think and act the way that people want us to think and act. So I think, let me explain this. In the NGO space, I think we tend to speak like scientists, or we tend to speak like policymakers. And for the most part, even with me, and I'm in this space, I don't really receive those messages very well. It doesn't move me to want to get up and dance. It doesn't move me to want to ask the question of, oh, okay, wait a minute. So 315 tons of ice just broke off in Antarctica. Okay, so what do I do now? Like, I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Right.
So we knew that if we wanted to really reach people, we had to reach people where they were in this journey. We had to talk to them the way they wanted to be talked to. And as we kind of scanned who does that best, brands do that best. Why do you buy the shoes that you buy? Why do you shop at a place that you shop at? Why do you even go to where you're vacationing? It's because marketing and advertising tells us that's what we should do, and we do it. And so when we think about our environmental campaigns, it really is through the lens of a brand marketer. So we hire the best creative agencies to create the best campaigns, and we're absolutely part of that creative process. But we work with agencies that work with top brands around the world because we want them to influence the way that we translate these really hard to understand environmental messages into very easy to digest sound bites that make you want to dance. that make you feel really good about the choice that you just made and make you want to do it again and again and again. And so far it's worked. Stop Sucking was fantastic. Hydrate Like a Mother has just been really amazing. And so what it's telling us is that it is the right path forward. Obviously, we have tons of lessons learned, and there's so much room for improvement. But I'm really excited about where we're heading and where we can go next with our campaign work.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love how you're bold and you think like a brand. That makes you stand out for sure. And like we talked about before, that's the sticky factor, right?
That's right.
So
we think about, selling like a pair of Nike shoes, and there's a brand value promise associated with that. And what we're selling is we're selling a healthy ocean. And there's a brand value promise when you can sell a healthy ocean. So ultimately that's our mission.
Oh, that's great. So have you found ways to measure the success of these programs? I mean, I know behavior change is hard and it takes a lot of time and energy, but wondering about what you've found since launching these.
It's interesting that you say behavior change. So as an organization, we don't measure behavior change. And we track it, but it's not something that we look at and we say, okay, done. And part of it is because, I'm a working mom. I have a 5-year-old child at home. I travel all the time. I get it wrong every day. I say all the time that if you were waiting for me to save the world, I would disappoint you every single day because I'm human. And behavior is state dependent. So even though I know I should exercise every day, even though I know I should eat a more balanced diet, even though I know that I should sleep more, I don't do it every day because I'm human. And behavior change is a human trait, right? We behave every day. So if we were only tracking awareness or we're only tracking behavior change, what we would miss is we would miss market shifts. And that's what we really focus on. So while we're out here with our shiny object saying, hey, just stop sucking, just, don't use single-use plastic straws, what we're tracking how many single-use plastic straw manufacturers convert to a more sustainable alternative. We're tracking how many new alternatives come to the market. We're tracking what the price point is on plastic straws versus paper straws versus others, because fundamentally we understand market dynamics. And this is where I think the corporate work comes in that I've done for so long. If we are going to make significant shifts in the way that we engage with the environment, it is going to have to be led by corporations. Now, the movement at an individual level helps to identify the path forward for corporations and for policymakers. But the actual shift that we're looking for is corporate shifts. So when we think about the water bottle campaign, we were able to help bring to market a new brand of canned water, Ever and Ever. And it was really with the intent of showcasing to Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Nestle and others that there is an alternative and people like it. I think for a long time people were like, nobody's going to drink water out of a can. Actually, they do. They do. And they don't mind it. They don't really even think about it. So there's no excuse to not shift to aluminum as an alternative or even to other alternative delivery mechanisms. So the water bottle campaign for us has been successful to date because within just the first 2 months of the campaign, we saw some massive shifts happen with Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And those send signals to the marketplace that the market is now paying attention to. And I fully expect over the next 18 months, we're going to see more shifts.
Oh, I bet. And speaking of Ever and Ever, I spoke with Jane Pryor last week, and she was raving about how you guys at Lonely Whale, how you're helping them work with their long-term sustainability plan. And she mentioned, how obviously they're willing to share the spotlight because they wanted this shift. So as she mentioned, Pepsi and Coke coming to the table and that shift she's thrilled about. So from your perspective, in addition to that work that's being done and that immediate benefit to the market, is that your goal? Because she was raving about how you guys, you're not just working on that, but you want to help them with their long-term strategic sustainability vision. Is that how you like to work with companies? I'm thinking it is, but can you tell me more about that and how you like to work with corporations and companies like Jane?
Yeah, we don't work with very many companies.
Okay.
Interestingly, I mean, we choose very specifically who we work with, and the reason we choose to work with specific companies, it's because they have a strong sustainability ethos and practice. They have the right people in leadership positions who can make change happen. They have market cachet, or because of the work that they're going to do, we believe that it will create an inflection point in the marketplace. When we met Jane, and then if wherever Jane Pryor goes next, I'll work with that company because she's amazing. She's a force of nature. She's a force of nature. But when we met AMI, I think that there were probably several NGOs that would not have worked with AMI, with Vita Coco, because of their packaging. But what we saw was an earnest desire to really understand what their environmental footprint was and to work diligently to make sure that they weren't contributing to the global trash problem. And that is like a prerequisite for us. So do they have all the answers? Absolutely not. Were they willing to listen and be guided and to grow together in this? Absolutely. And so that's one of the reasons why we were so excited to work with them. We didn't start working with them with the intent of they're bringing a new brand of canned water to the market. That was a surprise. I mean, 2 months after we started working together, Jane called me and said, "Should we bring a new brand of water to the market?" And I was like, "Yes, that would be amazing. How fast can you do that? How fast can you do that?" So, so we work with partners like Alaska Airlines, who has such a strong sustainability performance records and has been such a leader within the U.S.-based airline industry. So we work with them on campaigns, and they're willing to be a little bit playful with us as well and have some fun. We work really closely with Bacardi. Again, they're willing to be very playful, very fun, kind of live on the edge of what they believe is the right way to talk about this or to work with this, and they really experiment. And I think that all comes back to one of our foundational principles that if we keep addressing these issues the same way that we always have, we're going to keep failing the same way we always have. So for the 20,000 NGOs out there focused on the environment, I look at the state of our environment today and I'm really, really concerned. We haven't made the progress that we need to make. There's little tiny pockets here and there, but for the most part, we're not getting the job done. And so that means we have to work with corporations and we have to be willing to be more creative, and we have to be willing to let go of our assumptions about the way it should be. And we did that, and Jane did that with us at Ever and Ever. And look at what happened. They brought this amazing product to market that created this movement with Pepsi and Coca-Cola to really shift the timing with which they were going to bring aluminum to market. It was never a question that they were going to bring aluminum to market. It was the timing with which they brought that aluminum to market that was the big market shift. So I love the partnership we have with Ever and Ever, and I'm really excited to see where we go with it.
Oh, amazing. That's great. And I've also read about the new HP laptop. And I know you work with them, but I know there's a bigger movement behind that. So what is Next Wave Plastics, and could you tell us more about that and that movement?
Yeah, Next Wave Plastics was an initiative that we started with Dell Technologies. It really got its start when Adrian Grenier was hired by Dell as their first social good advocate. And he asked them to help him. So they asked him to help them communicate their social good goals, and he said, "Great, I will do that. I need your help too. I need your help to fix this ocean plastic pollution problem." And that began an 18-month quest for Dell to really understand what could a tech giant do to affect change in this plastic pollution crisis when they don't really make a bunch of plastic packaging that gets thrown in the water or is on the ground. They discovered that they could source ocean-bound plastic and then integrate it into their products, but they realized at the same time that the issue is so gigantic that it's going to take a lot more than one company doing this on their own. At the same time, HP was doing the exact same thing. So HP was working in Haiti. They were standing up a supply chain. They were testing material integration in their ink cartridge. It went really well. And the important thing about what HP was doing in Haiti is they were using red-tinted plastic bottles. Well, nobody liked the idea of trying to recycle colored bottles. It's much more difficult. What we like to recycle is clear plastic bottles. So HP was really looking at how do we solve this gap, which is both we don't have infrastructure for recycling in Haiti, let alone even if we did, nobody would take these red bottles. So you have these two tech giants working in parallel paths at the exact same time. What we did with Dell is in 2017, we stood up an initiative we called Next Wave Plastics. And it's a fully transparent collaborative initiative that works now with 10 corporations, including HP and IKEA, and we're soon to announce a few others. And it is working with the intent of ensuring a minimum of 25,000 pounds plastic that was once bound for the ocean never makes it there. Instead, it gets fully integrated into products that will never make their way back into the ocean. So if you can imagine a Herman Miller couch made from ocean-bound plastic. Well, nobody in their right mind is going to throw a Herman Miller couch in the ocean. That would be crazy.
Right.
We joke all the time that we're like, if only we could find like a Herman Miller chair on the beach, that would be a dream come true.
Exactly.
It's not going to happen. Just like most of us are not going to unscrew our water bottle holder from our bicycle and throw it in the river. So Trek has been integrating ocean-bound plastic that came from fishing nets that once would have been thrown over the boats off the coast of Chile to do harm to marine life because it's so expensive to dispose of these properly on land. But Trek, working with Borreo, has been able to integrate this material into their water bottle cages, which is really cool. You know, not only is it a cool story, but it's having direct measurable impact. And so these companies they're at the table together, they're working intently with each other, they're really making change happen on the ground in parts of the world where the issue is the most acute. I'm particularly excited about HP's recent announcement with the Dragonfly, integrating ocean-bound plastic, in this case, brown water bottles, also that nobody wants to recycle because they're harder to work with, brown water bottles into what's called ABS plastic. So they created a blended polymer. The first time we've seen this really opens up the technology innovation discussion in a way that we haven't seen to date. So if you can imagine every laptop made with plastic that was once bound for the ocean, or every TV in your home, or anything, your phone, anything that's made that has a hard shell plastic around it, that's the innovation that HP just created. So yeah, it's in the, it's in the laptop, it's in the speaker. I think that's really amazing. It's a game changer from a design engineer standpoint that I'm really expecting it will shift the way that a lot of companies think about what they could be doing to integrate ocean-bound plastic into their products. So I'm so excited for this innovation. I think it's one of the best things that we've seen.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh, how exciting. Can't wait to watch this shift happen. And do you think that we will see a time when recycled plastic makes more economic sense than virgin plastic?
As part of the UN General Assembly and Climate Week, we saw an announcement by the Australian entrepreneur and billionaire Andrew Forrest and his wife Nicola Forrest and the Minderoo Foundation. They have committed $300 million of their own money to addressing the pricing disconnect between virgin and recycled plastic. So today, virgin plastic is so inexpensive that it just doesn't pencil out for companies to buy recycled plastic. Plus, we don't have that much recycled plastic available across a variety of substrates. So when we think about plastic, we think about number ones or number twos. Those are fairly easy to find, but we still don't have a ton of those available, a ton of recycled resins in those numbers. And so this initiative is really intended to do two things. One is to fix that price imbalance between virgin and recycled plastic so that we see more end-of-life remediation, meaning we collect more of this. we collect it before it gets into the ocean. And that we see more technology innovation to be able to help companies figure out how to utilize this recycled material. Until we solve for that price imbalance, we're never going to get out ahead of this. And I think all these moments like with HP and others are really exciting, and they show us a path forward. This is a market dynamic, kind of going back to the where we started in the conversation, that we need a massive market shift. We need to fix the pricing disconnect, and we need to start to demand that oil and gas companies stop producing more single-use virgin plastics, polymers, without putting the right investment in the back end in more remediation and technology innovation. otherwise, we're getting excited about what I would call very, very inspirational, shiny objects that show us the path, but don't allow us to possibly ever catch up. So I'm really hopeful, and I love what Andrew and Nicola just did. I think it's the right conversation for us to be having. And now we just need the market to follow with them.
Right. Okay, good. Well, I'm hopeful. The shift will happen. It just will take a lot of time.
Yeah, it'll happen. And there's so much, I think, positivity out there right now with NGOs coordinating and policymakers coordinating and industry really caring. I mean, industry really cares about making sure that the ocean doesn't have plastic in it. I think that's the one thing that we can all agree to, is that plastic does not belong in the ocean. And I think when you start with that as the basic premise, then anything is possible. And I have to believe it's possible. I have a 5-year-old son. I want my child to be able to swim in the ocean. Right. I just do. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. And I want him to see seabirds, and I want him to see fish that aren't nibbling on plastic, and I want him to see whales, and I want him to experience turtles, and I want him our children deserve a future that we had. And that's what we fight for at Lonely Well every single day. We fight for a future that every child, every community deserves. And I know that it's possible for us to get there. I think we're going to see change happen a lot more quickly than it might feel like because of the momentum that I'm seeing right now from the industry. And it's really starting to align with the values and the principles that the NGO community has, that parents and community members have all over the world. It's not to say we don't have big hurdles to overcome, but I'm really, really positive that we will see a future where we stop the flow of plastic going into the ocean.
That's fantastic. I think you're right. And Dune, where does policy change fit into your agenda?
We are not policy wonks at Lonely Well. We appreciate policy, but we're not the ones who will be writing the policy language. So our job at Lonely Well is to just ask questions and to help people become curious in a way that allows them to get engaged in the issue in the way that's the most fitting for them. Same is true for corporations. And what I know from policy is that policy will follow. So when consumers are engaged, demanding change, when corporations get engaged and they can demonstrate that they're willing to take this challenge on, whatever it is, then it's much easier for policymakers to then follow next and to put in place policies that match the aspirations and the intention of communities. So that's really how we see our role with policy, now policy integration. We are asked a lot, though, by policymakers to provide additional information to help them understand the issues, to come and testify, to make presentations. And what's funny, actually, recently is, and not funny but fun, is we've had a lot of engagement by state-level policymakers all over the United States who are proclaiming that they hydrate like a legislator. And they're showing, when they're in session, here's my reusable water bottle that I brought to session. And I just love that. I just think that's so fun, for policymakers to have a little bit of fun in this as well. And they're getting a little social media love from us. So it's really symbiotic. And that's I think that's our job. It's like, give people something kind of fun to talk about in this big, heavy issue. And then let's see where the conversation carries us.
Well, I love that. And you really focus on the positive. You're not into shaming anyone. You want to meet people where they are and just encourage them by example and with a bold, fun campaign that they can do it a little bit at a time. And I think that's key to helping. You're not asking people to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. You're just asking them to do what they can in this moment. And it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think if we only focus on shaming, we're not listening to ourselves. So how many of us have really changed our behaviors because we were ashamed into it? Guilt and shame are not, they're demonstrated to not result in change, long-term persistent change. So why would we use it in the environmental space? It doesn't work with us as individuals. But what does work as individuals is focusing on the positive and nurturing and encouraging and having a little bit of fun and in doing it with your friends. You don't have to go it alone. You can really get engaged with other people and make this change happen. And we fundamentally we believe this is the right way to do it. We've seen it work in practice, and we're really excited to continue to be the organization that supports people who make these changes.
Oh, that's great. And then what advice would you give people to affect change, whether it's small or learn long-term?
I heard some great advice by my colleague, Emma Riley, this last week. She was asked that same question. And her response was so spot on, so smart. And it is every day in your job, your life, as a parent, as a spouse, as a sister, as a brother, as a mother, whatever it is, look for tiny moments where you can make change happen. And don't feel like you have to necessarily completely change your life, your orientation, who you are, what your job is, but just look for opportunities to make tiny changes every day. And then you start getting really used to it, and then you can really affect change. And I think that's right. So if I'm at the airport, I brought my reusable water bottle. Great. Step 1.
Right.
And now I'm going to go try to fill it up. Step 2. So I think that's right. I think it's got to be small, tiny. Don't make it too hard, and have fun with it. Invite somebody to do it with you.
I love that. So what's next for Lonely Whale? What are your big audacious goals?
Well, we're going to stay the course in all of our work. We have a really exciting program, the Ocean Heroes Boot Camp, where we have kids from all over the world, more than 50 countries, coming together to learn how to campaign on plastic pollution and, more importantly, work together. So we'll see that expand this next year. So starting to think about what our next campaign is. So I think you'll have to stay tuned on that.
Oh, I can't wait to see. And speaking of children, how important are children in the work that you do?
Oh, so important, because they're often the ones who have the answers, because they're really free to think about change rather than thinking about it the same old way that all of us adults have, right? They see it through a fresh set of lenses and different perspectives. So it's critical that they're engaged.
So, Dune, I know you're at the airport, and I'm going to let you go to catch your flight, but how can listeners learn more about Lonely Whale? Do you want to share your Twitter handle or your URL?
Yeah, just head up to lonelywhale.org. @lonelywhale is our Twitter handle, as well as Instagram handle, and we'd love to stay connected. Tell us what inspires you.
Oh, that's great. And I hope our listeners will answer. And thank you for all that you do and what your team is doing, because I know you're a small team, but your impact has been huge, and we can't wait to watch your future campaigns and join right along with you. So thank you for inspiring us all.
Thanks for the time today.
Thanks, Dune, and have a safe flight.